Does it make sense to have two different lengths here? Does that make sense? No. So remember, when you're dealing with word problems, we need to figure out which of these makes sense. Which one does not make sense? The negative 10. Why does the negative 10 not make sense? Because you can't have a side length cannot be negative. Okay, so sides can't be negative. So whenever we're dealing with word problems, you want to make sure that they make sense. Okay, it doesn't make sense to have a negative side length. So that one does not work. So you just throw it away. Okay? Now, all we needed to solve for was the x. Now, if I actually asked you what the side lengths were, you would have to plug back in. Okay? But this one, I'm just asking you to find the value of x. So x would equal 3. Okay, let's try another one. Now we're just going to go back to solving. Okay, so solve, for number 6. A couple more here. Solve 5x squared minus 45 equals 0. 5x squared minus 45 equals 0. Let's solve. Now this one's already set equal to 0, so I can factor. How can I factor this? GCF, right. Take out a 5. Left behind would be x squared minus 9 equals 0. I can factor again. X squared minus 9 breaks down to be x plus 3, and x minus 3 equals 0. Set the parts equal to 0, so 5 equals 0. Is that dealing with any x's? No, we're solving for x. So if you just have 5 equals 0, that means nothing. Okay, you don't keep the 0. That one just gets thrown away. Okay, it's kind of like if you divided it away. 0 over 5 it's just 0. Okay, then set your x plus 3 equal to 0, and x minus 3 equals 0. We'll get x equals negative 3 and positive 3. Say again, JT? Right, it's still just x plus 3 and x minus 3. You are not always going to have a negative and positive. You could have 2 negatives, you could have 2 positives, you can have one of each.
So if you have 2 positives on
if you have 2 positives, that's okay.
No, on like the last one.
Oh, if you have something like an area, it's going to be very obvious as to one's going to be thrown away because it doesn't make sense, and one will work. You wouldn't have like 2 positives where you'd have to decide. Okay. Also, if you had 3 answers here, if you ended up with 3 answers, hopefully you would realize that also doesn't make sense because we're generally talking about x-intercepts, and it doesn't make sense for a U shape or a parabola shape to touch 3 times. That isn't possible. Okay, just wouldn't make any sense. Let's try another one. How about 9x cubed plus 12x squared plus 4x equals 0. 9x cubed plus 12x squared plus 4x equals 0. So this is already set equal to 0, so we need to solve. So how could I factor?
Take out an x.
Take out a GCF, right. Take out an x. We'll be left behind with 9x squared plus 12x plus 4 equals 0. Have to keep factoring. Yes, so you still have an x out front. And yes, we have to guess and check here. Okay, it's both positive inside. Now remember, I don't remember if you guys, or hopefully you guys remember this. If you have a square in the front and a square at the back, I told you almost always, now not always, but almost always, you will use those squares as your guess and check numbers. Okay, so if I broke these up, you'd have 3x and 3x, and 4 breaks down to 2 and 2. If you check that, in the middle we'd have 6x. On the outside, I'd also have 6x. Does that work to give me my 12x? Yep. That does work. Okay. Then you can set the parts equal to 0. So x equals 0. Now, should I keep that or throw it away? This one you keep. Okay. If you have a number equals a 0, that doesn't make any sense. Because remember, we're solving for an x. If you get x equals 0, that is okay. Okay, because if you drew that, that just means that your parabola went through at 0, and that's fine. Okay, it can cross at 0. That's totally fine. Okay, then here, 3x plus 2 equals 0. Now, this one I would expect that you show a little bit of work. Okay, subtract 2, that gives you 3x equals negative 2. And divide by 3, x is negative 2/3. Does that make sense? Is that okay?
Yes.
That's fine. That just means it crosses somewhere between 0 and 1. That's okay. Doesn't have to be at a perfect exact, like, you know, little dash mark. That's fine. Now, do I need to rewrite this last one? No, because it's going to be the same thing. Okay? So you only have to do it one time. I do not want to see 0, comma, 2/3, comma, negative 2/3. Okay? That does not work. Please do not write it twice. You only write it one time because it is only one x-intercept. Okay? And then the last one, I want you to solve 3x squared minus 8 equals negative 10x. 3x squared minus 8 equals negative 10x. My first step said I have to have it equal to what?
0.
To 0. So if I want this equal to 0, which way do you think it would be best to move things? To the left or to the right? You always want to move them, you move them so that your x squared will be positive. Okay, so in this case, yes, we want to move it to the left. So add 10x to both sides. Are there any like terms to combine? No. But when you write this, I want you to write it in descending order. Okay, so make sure you write the x squared, then the x, then the number. Okay, otherwise it's difficult to factor if you can't quite figure out what's going on. So yes, you can factor this. You do have to do a little bit of guess and check here. Okay, you should know that 3 has to be 1 and 3. So 1x and 3x. And then in the back, you either have to guess at 1 and 8 or 2 and 4. Can't put in your signs yet because you know one's positive, one's negative. Do we want to guess 1 and 8 or 2 and 4?
2, 4.
Probably 2 and 4. Should the 2 go in the first one or the second one? 2 goes here, 4 goes there?
No, other way around.
Is that going to work?
Yes.
6 and 4.
Yeah. The one has
Does
to be
this
positive
work?
and negative.
Right. Okay. Turks is right. If you check this, this is 6x. This is 4x. But you know, because it's negative at the end, one has to be positive, one has to be negative. So that does not work. Okay. So you do have to flip these. Okay. So when you do your guess and check, you do have to actually check. So if you multiply that through, we've got a 12x and a 2x. Then if you put in one positive, we're going to get the bigger one positive. So the first one's positive, second one's negative. And that does work. Okay. Then set each of those equal to 0. So x plus 4 times 3x minus 2 equals 0. So set each part equal to 0. Your first equation just flips, so it's x is negative 4. Second one, add 2 to both sides. That gives you 3x equals 2. Divide by 3, x is 2/3. Okay, so we still have two different answers, negative 4 and positive 2/3.